Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. It's episode 371. We've got a great guest here, somebody I've been looking forward to coming on the show, and I persuaded his assistant and himself to do it. That's Joe Erway from the webinaragency.com, and he does a great podcast as well called Sold with Webinar Podcast. So, Joe, can you quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
For sure. Thanks for having me on, Jonathan. So my name is Joel Erway, and we run the webinar agency, and we run two podcasts. First being Sold with Webinars, where, go figure, I talk about all things marketing, all things webinars to grow your business. And so that's been running for about 2 years now. Have, 60 or so episodes that are live. It's a lot of fun, and knock on wood, I've gotten some pretty good feedback from that. So that's my Sold with Webinars podcast. We also run another podcast called Experts Unleashed, where we interview very successful entrepreneurs, talk about their journey and how they've been able to leverage their expertise and turn it into income. So that's a much more broad spectrum, but that's been fantastic as well. I think we have about 65 episodes live on that, and those are all joint interviews. And so that's a very, very great podcast. So we run the agency where we build high converting sales webinars for, anyone who's running a course, anyone who's trying to enroll people into their coaching programs. And we've been doing this for about 4.5 years now. So we've done hundreds and hundreds of webinars. I would like to think that we've built a pretty reputable brand in the space. So we stay an inch wide and go a mile deep. And so we've focused on webinars for quite a long time. And that's what we do.
That's great. And I've got my great co-host, Cindy. She's a little bit unwell, but she's a trooper.
Sorry. Thanks, Jonathan. Hi, Joel. Thank you for joining us today. I do have a little bit of a cold today, but it is still me. And I am from thecoursewhisperer.com.
That's great. And what we're going to be discussing during the show, folks, is how you can utilize the power of webinars to build your online course or membership business online, how you can attract really people that are interested in your course and sign them up through the power of webinar. But before we go to the main part of the interview, folks, I'd like to talk about one of our great sponsors, and that's Kinster Hosting. We host the WP-Tonic website on Kinster, been doing that for a year. Kinster decided to be one of my major sponsors again for the whole of 2019. And this is just a great company to deal with. They only host WordPress websites. They use it on Google Cloud hosting platform. You get a great interface, and the main thing is you get expert 24/7 support from a small but dedicated team. I've never had support like it. They really know their business, and you can communicate through live chat, email, and they just respond straight away. If that's interesting to you or your clients, go to kinster.com. So, Joe, me and Cindy are doing our first webinar at the end of this month, and I was moved to action by listening to your own podcast. So it's all your fault, Joe, when we go down in flames. So we're doing it. Why do you think people that got a membership e-learning business, why should you look at webinars?
Oh, first and foremost, in the e-learning space, there is nothing more congruent than using information to sell information, right? So a webinar in its own right is an event-based model where people are signing up to learn from you. You have the ability to quickly warm up a brand new audience, a cold audience, teach them some relevant content, give them some information that inspires them to take action, and at the end, sell more information, sell your course, sell your coaching program, right? In the world of the expert-based business, the information-based business, information-based course business, using information to sell more information is extremely congruent. Webinars provide a great vehicle for you to do that, whether you're doing them live, whether you're doing them automated, and it has just been fantastic way to build a bond with an audience in a virtual environment. Obviously every single day the world continues to go more virtual by the second. And so we need to figure out ways to build that community, build that engagement with those potential customers. And a webinar environment allows you to do that more so than any other online platform, sales letters, video sales letters, you name it.
So, got any tips about when you're doing your first one about getting some people to actually attend it?
Well, it all starts with making the topic something compelling and something exciting that they actually want to learn. Many times I see people who are putting on webinars, they pick a topic that they think that their audience is going to be interested in, and they haven't tested that topic. And so you want people to show up, make it something that they actually want to learn. Spend a lot of time developing the topic of the webinar, and you'll see your attendance rates come up. You'll get people to register, but if it's something that they really want to learn, if it's something that's pressing and urgent and very important for them, that's one of the most critical elements of getting them to actually show up, because otherwise they're just going to register and they'll say, kind of sounds interesting, but maybe I'll just wait for the replay. Make the topic engaging, make the topic very interesting, and that's really the first step.
Right. Well, I'm also offering a good giveaway. Does that help at all?
It can, but you really just want to make sure, first and foremost, that the topic is relevant. Obviously, you can do tactics like I'm
getting nervous, Joe. I'm not sure he is. I'm getting nervous now, Joe. Rob, I knew it was going to be like that, Joe. Got a question, Sydney?
So you say that really the first step is kind of coming up with that compelling, engaging topic that people are going to want to sign up with. So let's say you've got that. What's your next step you recommend?
Yeah, you could always give. It includes some sort of giveaway to bribe them to show up. That definitely works. We've seen it work. I tend to use it sparingly. I use it. It depends on the audience, really. If I have to bribe them, are they my ideal audience members? Is that my ideal listeners? Maybe, maybe not. So I really take it on a case-by-case basis. If I'm really struggling to get people to show up live, then we will probably include a bribe to show up. It definitely works. I'm just a little bit more reluctant than some other people to just use it right away, because I want to attract the most quality people. But it definitely increases your show up rate, 100%.
I was just nervous. It was our first one, so I thought I better offer something extra.
It helps. I mean, it definitely helps. And there's always a lot of nerves when you do your first webinar. It's like you're giving your first talk, your first presentation. You have to make sure that you're clear, crisp, and concise. There's a lot of butterflies. There's a lot of nerves that go through when you are hosting your first live presentation.
So we're almost in the middle of February. I don't know what happened to January. That just seemed to blast past, Joe. Had any new things happening in the world of webinars that have sparked some interest in you, or where do you think webinars are going in 2019? Trends, that type of thing.
Oh man, they're growing every single day. I mean, they're becoming more and more popular. I think the biggest trend that we're seeing is figuring out ways that we can get more leverage. If you jump into the world of webinars, very, very quickly, you're going to be inundated with the world of automated webinars. Now, there are pros and cons to each. I mean, obviously, I think once you really start to grow your business, number one thing that you're trying to get is leverage, and you're trying to get back your time, and you're trying to make the best use of a successful sales webinar, and you want to go automated. Some people want to go automated right away, and we have seen them work. We've seen them convert right away with automated webinars, but depending on what your goal is and what your objective is, usually live is the right way to go initially. You want to.
I listened to your advice on that. In your episodes, you strongly advise that you got to do it live initially, and then look at the automated one, don't you?
Yep. Yeah. So it's good just to get your practice down and to get your delivery down, because there's a lot of different things that can affect your conversion rates on a webinar. How you sound, your tonality, your excitement level. It's all about getting your audience to be excited about your product and getting your audience to be excited to follow you. So there's lots of different things that you can do to optimize your conversions of your webinar. And so I do recommend practicing a few times with a live audience. And the best part about being live is you can usually get higher conversion rates with live, because you have that live engagement. You can talk to your customers on a one-to-many scale basis. And there's a lot of pros to doing them live before you turn it automated.
Oh, that's great. Any other trends you see developing in 2019?
A lot of trends that we're seeing is just in the technology space. I just had a couple of interviews with a couple software providers in the webinar space, and they're seeing just user base grow on an unbelievable clip. In terms of like different tactics inside of the webinar space, I mean, there's certain things that are happening with funnels, but I wouldn't say like any groundbreaking things. It's just really the trends that we're seeing is the growing popularity in webinars, which is great for us. But now we're seeing a big need in figuring out, like, hey, what do we say on the webinars? What type of content do we provide? And that's really what we specialize in, is getting that converting message and getting relevant content and getting them to lead them to the sale and the offer. So really the biggest trend is just, overwhelmingly growing popularity.
One thing that some of your conversations in your podcast specifically aimed at webinars is that you've had some really deep dives in funnels, haven't you, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us maybe a couple quick funnel that you would start off with? Because I'm not new to this, but some of your discussions, I forgot his name. He was a Facebook trainer. You had a discussion with him. My God.
Oh, was it for messenger bots? Was it for Facebook ads? And
it was Facebook
bots?
ads, and he does training courses to train people to be have Facebook agencies.
Okay. Yep.
I've got his name though, but
it was
Dan Henry. Yeah,
yep.
That was an amazing episode where you did a big dive there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, what was the question?
What was the question? Can you give an example of a funnel that maybe somebody who's starting on their webinar journey could utilize?
Webinar funnels are very, very simple. I mean, it's simple is almost always better. I mean, it starts basically just at a webinar registration page, a confirmation page, a replay page, and your checkout page. I mean, you can't get any more bare bones than that. So really, you can get Ninja, you can do all sorts of crazy optimization techniques, but we have seen $1 million funnels built off the basis of just a standard event-based funnel, which is registration, confirmation, replay, and your checkout page. And we've seen that work very, very well. So from a bare bones standpoint, I would recommend starting with that, because we've seen $1 million success webinars with just that funnel. Yep.
Oh, that's great. We're going to go for our break, folks. We're coming back. We're going to continue the discussion with Joe, the king of webinar training, I would say. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. And as I said, I'm going to plug our own webinar, me and Cindy's, before we go back into the conversation. So, folks, we're doing a webinar about the 7 things you need to know if you want to build a successful online course. And both me and Cindy know a little bit about the subject, definitely Cindy. And we're doing it on the 28th of February at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if that's interesting, you can go to WP-Tonic /webinar and you can register for this free webinar. And if you join us on our first webinar show, as I was saying to Joe, I'm offering a nice inducement just to cover my nerves. Basically, you get 1 year free support of from one of WP-Tonic's support packages for the whole year, with a worth of almost over $900 for your learning management website, LearnDash, Lifter NMS, or anything else that you might need support when it comes to your WordPress website. Now, Joe, when it comes to the technology, what do you think some of the leading players in the webinar area are for people looking to start their first webinar?
Well, there's a handful of ones out there that have been making some big splashes. And if you're going live and you're doing a live webinar presentation, you want to make sure you go with a reliable platform. Just this past week, I was talking to one of my old clients who had a couple thousand people registered for one of her webinars. And I won't throw the webinar platform under the bus, but they couldn't handle all sorts of issues with getting people. They couldn't even log on. So that entire webinar was a waste. I mean, thousands of people, it was right in the middle of their launch, thousands of people couldn't log on. So you want to go with somebody who's reliable. And I'll give you a couple reliable platforms. GoToWebinar, although they're the most expensive, they're the most reliable. And it is, when you start getting the big numbers, like hundreds or thousands of people registering for your webinars, that's when I would consider them. There are other great low-cost platforms that you can do as you start to grow up and as you start up and start early on. Big Marker is one that's up and coming. I just had a chat with one of their executives 2 days ago. We chatted on the phone. They've got some really cool things coming up. ClickMeeting is another one that has tens of thousands of users. Demio is another webinar platform that has done very, very well. And those would be the ones that I would recommend for live. Now, once you go automated, once you want to start hosting your funnels, ClickFunnels is kind of the tried and true funnel builder that we've seen in the space. And they also have an automated webinar funnel that you can do, but it's really nothing more than just hosting a video. But I will say I've seen a lot of successful automated webinar funnels hosted on ClickFunnels, just using that platform, not even using, a more advanced marketing webinar platform. If you want to get more advanced and get more analytics for your automated webinars, EverWebinar is kind of the big gorilla in the room for automated webinars, and they give you a lot of great statistics. So I like using them for automated webinars. I would not use Webinar Jam for live webinars. I've just had a handful of issues that have cost my clients and our own projects lots and lots of money. But EverWebinar for automated webinars, I would definitely recommend. And a lot of these platforms I've mentioned for live webinars, they are also coming out with automated webinars. Big Marker is one. I know ClickMeeting, I think they're about to release, or they have released automated webinars, but those are the main tools in the space.
All right. So Webinar Jam in general, is it a platform that in general you would avoid, really?
I would, just because we've had a lot of issues with it. I hope that they fix it, but once you get to the large audiences, I've never heard of anyone having an issue with GoToWebinar for large issues or large capacity webinars. And we've just run into multiple issues with Webinar Jam, especially when we get to, increase in numbers and increase in size.
Well, we're staying for the present moment because it's our first one with Zoom. Because
Zoom's another great one. I forgot to even mention them. Yep.
So we've used it for most of our podcasting, and we use the webinar add-on to do our podcasting. Mm-hmm. And as a starter platform, one of the problems with Zoom was its registration page was dog ugly. But I'm using a page builder that had an add-on that enabled you to integrate with Zoom.
Yep.
So you can do your own custom landing registration page and avoid the ugly Zoom registration page.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
So that's what we do. Got a question, Cindy?
I do. So Jonathan's the tech guy. I'm the content girl. So I'm assuming because you're talking about building webinars for your clients, would you say you have kind of a standardized format or template or layout of how you recommend webinars should be delivered?
Yeah. So basically, when we work on webinars, we follow what we call the an ARE webinar sales structure. I'll give you the quick, dirty, condensed version of it right now, but essentially, ARE stands for the 3 different components of our webinar. So introduction, content, and your close. So when we're in the introduction, what we would like to focus on are the 3 A's, which are authority, awareness, and attention, right? So if I can hit those 3 things inside of the introduction of our webinar, that's like my 3 check boxes. Okay. So let's start with authority. How can we build ourselves up as the foremost, expert on the topic that we are presenting? Now, the great news about a webinar is that just because you are the host of a webinar, you already viewed as that authority figure. So this isn't too difficult to accomplish. You do want to include some additional elements to kind of solidify yourself as the authority and give yourself, recognition on projects that you've worked on, different accomplishments you've had related to this topic, and really just brag about yourself. Some people have a hard time bragging about yourself, but it's really important to do this in the beginning part of your webinar because it's going to allow them to believe you it's going to allow them to believe you about the content that you're going to be teaching. So that's authority. Awareness is all about the topic in which you are presenting and like what are the problems that you are solving, what are the trends in the industry that your audience needs to be aware about related to this topic that you're teaching on the webinar. You have to be the chief advocate for showing them the problems and relating the problems to what they are experiencing today. The rising cost of Facebook ads are, for anyone who's in the online marketing space, right? Facebook ads are just going up every single year, every single month, right? So these are big problems that they need to be aware of. So bring some statistics that back your proof up, that back your claims up and show them that this is a big problem and I'm going to show you how to solve it, right? So bringing that awareness level to a heightened state so they know that the topic that you're here to talk about is important and relevant to them. So that's authority, awareness, and then attraction, right? So attraction is what brings them closer to you. What makes you, it kind of goes hand in hand with authority, but what's happening in the industry right now that is going to get them to pay attention, right? So once we accomplish all of this, bringing statistics, bringing problems, and making sure that your content is relevant, clearly outlining who this presentation is for and calling out your ideal customers, because once they see that, they're going to realize, okay, cool, I'm in the right place. And if you've watched webinars, you'll see a lot of people doing this over and over and over again, that we can become numb to it, but it's extremely important. It's extremely important because your audience may or may not have been on tons of webinars, and you just have to make sure that you're speaking directly to them. So that's the introduction, authority, awareness, and attraction. Any questions so far?
No, that's good. Because again, I'm putting together the webinar, so it's good to have those elements there to kind of make sure that you give them a reason to listen to you and a reason to listen to you specifically because of the authority that you bring. So no, that's good. Yep. So the next one is the content part, right?
Yep. So content, we are looking at here the 2 R's. So we had the 3 A's for the introduction and the 2 R's for the content. That's all about rapport and relationship building. Okay. The content that we choose for our webinar is strategically placed. There's a couple ways that we can do it, right? We can do 3 or 4 or 5 core points that we want to talk about. And this is my favorite way to do it. And my entire goal is to let them know that I've been where you are, and this is how I overcame the situation. I know exactly how you feel. I've been in your situation before. This piece of content is going to explain how I got over that hurdle, right? So if I've got 3 or 4 or 5 pieces of content that I'm going to be teaching them, my goal with every single one of those pieces of content is to make them one step closer to being on the same level as where I am. Because when I'm starting out in the webinar, they're going to view me as this authority. They're going to be, so they view me up high. They're going to be down low at some place where they've got a problem. And that gap is a big, big gap. And in my introduction, I set that gap as wide as possible to let them know that there's room for improvement, like there's a better way. In my rapport and relationship building, my entire goal is to build them a staircase, is to build them step by step by step, how to get up to my level. Like I want by the end of the presentation, by the end of the content, I want them to realize what it feels like to be at my level for just a brief moment in time. So every single piece of my content is another step. It's another staircase into bringing them closer to where I am. So by the time we get to the end of the content, they're now standing at the top of the staircase with myself. So the way that I do that is inside of all my elements that I teach, I will say, listen, I know exactly how you feel. I've been there before. I'll tell a story about what got me over this, how I experienced this one problem, what got me over this problem, and I'll bring them one step closer. So it's all about building that rapport and that relationship. And so we do that with strategically placed content that introduces our vehicle, introduces our system, and shows them the major objections that they would have to having success with that. So by the end of it, they're standing at that top staircase with me.
That's great. I don't have any. Jonathan, do you have a question about that specifically?
No, I was just blown away with that. You did a fantastic job there, Joe, as normal.
Sorry, he still has to do the close part. I'm going to.
All right, do the close part, Joe.
Because I want to hear it. So.
Yeah. So the close, a lot of people really get tripped up with this, and I think they overthink it. So the close is now section E. So that stands for the exchange, right? We have 3 A's for the introduction, 2 R's for the content, and then we've got the exchange for the close. With your offer, obviously you want to make sure that you have a strong and compelling offer, but you've basically given them an outline inside of your content. You've given them, some great valuable content inside of your webinar. Hopefully you're blowing them away with what they've learned. Now it's time to ask them to take the next step. I mean, obviously, with a 60-minute webinar, you can't cover, everything possible, but you give them an overview, you give them, the new vehicle, the new system that they can have success with. And at the end you say, listen, let's take this to the next level, right? I've got an offer for you. And if you want it, if this sounds good to you, then I want you to get it. If it doesn't sound good to you, then I don't want you to get it, plain and simple, right? You make it very, very, giving them the decision to move forward or not. Now it eliminates what the most important thing that it does is it eliminates your anxiety as a presenter to present the offer. You're giving them a way out, and they're also going to respect you for it. This is the simplest way to present your close as an exchange. I have something that is worth far more than the money that I'm charging you for. And if this is a problem that is important for you to solve, then I want you to seriously consider what we're going to be, offering you on this presentation today. And so we go through it and we just set it up as an exchange. Now we're not hard pitching them. We're saying, this is what it'll do for you. I'm really encouraging you, if it makes sense, to jump in and grab this offer. So that's how I always like to frame it. So my audience has in their mind, I'm not asking them to buy, right? I'm asking for an exchange, because you're giving them value in exchange for something that is of value to you. And so that's how I position all of my webinars, and that's like the top level overview of what I can give you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I like how you position it as an exchange. Mm-hmm. Do you, if you say it's a 60-minute webinar, do you have like kind of how much time you should spend on each, or it depends on the person?
Usually 10 to 15 minutes for the introduction, 40 to 45 minutes for the content, and then your close, I would say 10 to 15 minutes before you reveal the call to action. And then at that point, you can go as long as you want with like Q&A, bonuses, the whole 9 yards. But you want to make sure that you at least give them the opportunity to buy no later than like 70 to 80 minutes, right? Just because people don't have all that much time. So that's like the bare max that you want to go in terms of giving them the offer. Your webinar might be 3 hours. It might be 2 hours, right? Because you can have Q&A, you can have bonuses that you give them at the end, but you want to make sure you get to the meat and potatoes and the call to action within 70 to 80 minutes of your webinar.
Got it. Cool. Well, thank you for walking me through that, Joel. I appreciate it. Jonathan.
Sure.
Oh, it's just been a blast. We're going to finish off the podcast part of the show. Hopefully Joe will agree to stay on for 10, 12 minutes to give some bonus content, which you'll be able to see on the WP-Tonic website and YouTube channel, with the whole interview with show notes, a full set of show notes. So, Joe, how can people, and I've really, thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's been a joy, Joe. How can people find out more about you and what you're up to, Joe?
Yeah, there's lots of ways that they can find us. So if you go to thewebinaragency.com, that'll give you links to our podcast, Sold with Webinars, and there's more information there. If you'd like to, consider our company for writing your webinar, you can reach out to us there, and there's more information there. I have a free $466,000 webinar case study over at soldwithwebinars.com. You can download that there. It's completely free. And the other thing is we have what we call the Webinar Vault, which is a collection of high converting webinars in the industry. So basically, every month I'm studying 10 to 15 webinars, just with sharpening our own axe for the team. And I want to see what else is working now. So I decided to put the best of the best inside of what I call the Webinar Vault. And so it's a paid membership site. So I upload one every month or so, full-blown webinar breakdown. You can see exactly what's working now, get a lot of inspiration, and see how you can apply those same tactics to yourself. I provide my critiques with those webinars, what I liked, what I didn't like, go through the funnels, go through their emails, go through the actual webinar. And it's all uploaded inside of that site. And that's called the Webinar Vault. And you can check that out at soldwithwebinars.com/register. And I think that's about it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joe. Cindy, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to, Cindy?
Well, if you want any help in terms of creating the content for your online course, that's definitely something I can help you with. And you can find me at thecoursewhisperer.com.
That's great. And thanks for joining us, folks. Next week, we will have a guest as great as Joe, giving you tools and insights to make your online educational business the success that you want for yourself and for your family in 2019. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye. Right, Joe, are you all right for another 10 minutes?
Sure.
Yeah. I think, the first question, and your insight, you got to choose a subject that really excites the audience. Can you give us some insight about how you find those topics that will work with your target audience?
There's a couple ways that you can do it. Number one is just polling your audience. So if you've got an email list, you can reach out to them and say, hey, listen, I'm interested in figuring out where you guys are struggling right now, and figuring out ways that I can help. What's the single biggest thing that you're struggling with, when it comes to your topic, right? So that's kind of the easiest way to get an idea for what they're interested in. The alternative is you can send emails to say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about putting together a training on XYZ topic. Would you be interested? So if you can go to your audience with an idea and get them to either say yes or no to that, that's kind of the opposite way. So rather than asking for a survey, you can say, are you interested in this topic? So those are probably the two most effective ways that I would go about testing that if you've got an audience.
Oh, that's great. What are some of the things you see people doing regularly wrong when it comes to webinars?
Regularly wrong. So normally what I see is people teaching too much, meaning they are essentially trying to take their entire 6-week or 8-week course, or however long your course is, and they're trying to condense it down into 40 minutes of content. And there's a saying that goes, a confused mind doesn't buy. A confused mind never buys, right? So creating the content on your webinar is a science. It's a very strategic skill set that a lot of people screw up. Some people get it right, but a lot of people think that, like, I'm just going to teach everything inside of my course in as short of time as possible, and I'm going to give them all the steps. So they, because in their mind, they're like, I want to wow my audience. And then at the end, they'll say, well, thank you, I'm going to buy your course. And that usually doesn't happen. When you teach so much, you confuse them, and you give them, you put them in a state of paralysis, and nobody is going to be able to purchase if they don't know what the right decision is for them. You don't want to overwhelm them. You want to make it sound simple and easy, and break down your process into consumable chunks that lead them to the next step is working with you.
Do you think a lot of people, is it similar situation to podcasting that people give up on it too quickly?
It's everything. It's habitual. A lot of people do give up on webinars too quickly because they don't see results on the first one. They say, "Oh, I spent $1,000 on ads and I only get, 30 people register and only 4 people showed up. Webinars don't work." It's like, well, go ahead. Like, you can think that, but I mean, it's just like anything else. You got to put in the time. You got to put in the effort. One of my clients, Jason Wardrop, is a perfect example. We started working together 2.5 to 3 years ago, and he was doing a weekly live webinar. To this day, he's still doing a weekly live webinar, and he's converting to the tune of well over $100,000 per month in sales now. And he's been doing a weekly live webinar. He's experimented with auto webinars, but he's been doing a weekly live webinar every single week for almost 3 years. And the reason why he does it is because he makes so much money on those live webinars. He goes, it doesn't make any sense for me not to do them. And he's continually growing his audience. He's growing his brand, and he's just crushing it right now. So where he is today versus 3 years ago, and he had some bad weeks, he had some struggles, but he kept at it. He kept going. And now he's a very well-established brand in the real estate marketing space, and people trust him. They know, like, and trust him. And he has just, taken the world by storm. And every single week he continues to make changes, continues to make improvements. A lot of people just don't have the wherewithal to stick it out and see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Cindy, you got a question?
And so does he do, and you say he makes improvements, but essentially is he doing the same webinar week after week? And is that what you would recommend, is kind of sticking with the one webinar and just making it as good as possible versus kind of changing your topic all the time?
Depends on what the results are. If you're doing a webinar and it doesn't convert, then we might need to change the topic of the webinar and the whole structure. Maybe we need to change the offer. We started out and we had some success in the beginning, so we knew that we were on the right track. And then it became just continuous improvements. Test this. Let's try this. Let's try showing up on camera. Let's try doing other things to raise the engagement. But at the end of the day, it's a mass converting tool. So it's a tool that you can use to enroll massive amounts of customers in mass at a mid to high ticket price point. He was selling $1,000 level course, and now he just reached out to me a week and a half ago. He's spending $100,000 per month on ads. So he's making well over that, because he wouldn't be doing it if he was losing money. But I know that he was pulling in like a 2 to 3x return on ad spend at one point. So if those numbers hold true, he's doing very, very well.
Oh,
Wow.
go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, and also you don't have to use the webinar. Obviously, a lot of the people you've had discussions for your podcast are using it as a revenue generation tool directly. But you can then also utilize some of your webinars in some of your outreach as a lead magnet, could you not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's lots of different types of webinars that you can run. There's cold traffic webinars, there's JV webinars, there's partner webinars, there's webinars where you sell a product, and there's webinars where the call to action is hopping on a call or a strategy session, right? There's automated webinars and there's live webinars. There's information only webinars where it's more of a brand building and awareness building and building that bond with your audience. So there's lots of different types of webinars. And actually, I'm going to be doing a podcast on the different types of webinars, because I think a lot of people they don't understand the different types of webinars. Maybe they're just kind of pigeonholed in one or two, but there's so many different ways that you can use webinars. There's customer webinars, there's demo webinars, there's SaaS webinars, there's so many different types. And there's immense power with it, for sure.
I think it's fantastic. We're going to wrap it up now. Joe's been fantastic with the information he shared with us, listeners and viewers. We'll be back next week with an expert that will help you grow your e-learning business. We'll see you next week, folks. Bye.